Hey everyone, welcome to the Anderson Bros Outdoors. I'm Jake, and today we're going to go over the Vanquish Optic build, so stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back. As I said, my name is Jake, and today we're going to go over this Vanquish Optic build. I'm going to cover what I've done with it to date and how I think it performs. It is obviously the RTR Sparko version, and we've made some significant modifications to it. Without further ado, let's jump right in. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the Vanquish Optic. Now, don't mind all of the cuts and scrapes and bruises. This is a well-used truck. It has definitely been put through its paces. Right now, you can see it's obviously wheel and tireless. That is because I only have one set of wheels and tires currently that I am utilizing for builds, and that is the single set of Battleborn wheels. These are 2.2s with some cut and shuts on them. I got these specific cut and shuts from R&H Hobbies. I did pay for them. They are regular price, so I didn't get them for free. Just an FYI. But they have performed really well. I'm extremely happy with them. These specific ones are Predator compound. I do have some G8s as well. So I got one of each. And I've been running, as you can see in the footage, this truck with these wheels and tires. I currently have the wheels and tires on another truck that I was running more recently, so they're not on this truck at the moment. Now, with that being said, let's dive into some of the other modifications that I've done with the truck. As you can see, it does look mostly stock. We have the stock axle on the front, the stock shocks, really the stock panels, the stock interior, and the whole 9 yards. From a perspective, there's really one major change that you can see. Well, I guess two major changes that you can see right away between the stock Optic and this one. First of all, we removed some of the parts that was on this platform here and did away with those. We have a new bed in the rear, and we replaced the old one because we also added four-wheel steer. So you can see here, this is the second major change. First major change is we removed some stuff, added the bed, and then we have the four-wheel steer axle in the rear. We also made some other modifications, and I'll jump into those in a minute. But first, I kind of want to talk about the performance. So the performance of the truck, I think now that I've added the four-wheel steer and some other features, it performs a little better than it did out of the box. I like driving it much better. It's been an exceptional truck. Now, one thing I would like to point out is that I don't actually run a clip in the battery box. So when you pull this out of the top, I have the bottom going in through the top, and there's enough pressure on that pin that you don't really need to clip it. So I haven't had any problems with it falling out. Now, I know that there's a clipless design, but I'm not actually utilizing that. So outside of that, we have made some other modifications, and let's go ahead and let's dive into that really quickly. In order to do that, we're going to need to pull the chassis off so you can actually see what I mean. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Four screws on the left, four screws on the right. Then the next step is to take the shocks off, and the cage will obviously slide right off. So let's get that done real quick. Now that we have the shocks loose, we can simply just spread the bottom part apart, and it should lift right up off the transmission. Lift off just like that. But unfortunately, we're not able to do that immediately because we have some things in the way, so we're going to remove those real quick like, and then it should fall right off. It's kind of a pain to do, but we got it done. Okay, so there is a rat's nest of wiring under here. This is kind of a painful process. Don't shoot the messenger. This wiring hack job is because it's, yeah, we could have spent a little more time on that, but anyway, I'll let you figure that out on your own. So as you can see, we do have some pretty significant modifications here. We have a VFD twin with a four-wheel steer buggy setup. And I've gotten some questions on how this works. Well, in order to make it four-wheel steer, you really only need two things. You need a front axle for the rear, and you need these Traxxas 5525 rod ends, or end links, or whatever you want to call them, for the upper rear. Now, once you have those on the upper rear, just like such, so you can see them right here, everything just simply bolts into place. Now that's just adding the rear axle for four-wheel steer. In order to add the VFD twin, you will need a Phoenix skid and the transmission, the VFD twin transmission. So what I've done, and I've uploaded these onto Cuts 3D, is I've created links for the shifting mechanisms. So right here you can see I'm using some cheap Spectrum servos with the stock servo horns to shift or select front and rear, dig or overdrive, and it works fantastic. So right out of the box, to make it four-wheel steer, all you have to add is the front axle for the rear, the 5525 rod ends, and it will bolt right into place. You don't have to do anything else. Obviously you're going to have to add in servo. I would not recommend the MKS Pro servo, the 550. It is a terrible servo. Now, if you want to make it dig, front and rear dig, or front and rear overdrive and dig, so I currently have in the front here, I have the front dig from Colorado Adventure Club. It is the 46% overdrive option, meaning that you replace the front part of, or the front gear with a dig unit, and I don't like that. So personally, with a four-wheel steer truck, I don't really like the overdrive past 25 to 30%. The almost 50% overdrive we're getting from this transmission is not good. So I would highly recommend getting a 6% gear replacement. So the overdrive gear is the rear one. And then the rear one, I'll link it in the description below. The rear overdrive actually has the bearing plate in it as well. So that's the one I would recommend. With four-wheel steer and front and rear dig, I don't think you need the overdrive near as much, because you can lock the front tires or the rear tires into place and get rid of the suspension play that you had before, or you can essentially suck the suspension down and eliminate the need to have the front tires spinning faster. So in my mind, overdrive is not really necessary with this specific transmission, at least from my experience thus far. This transmission and the skid is from a Phoenix kit. You can buy them on the Vanquish website, or a lot of people sell them on Facebook. You can get them from anywhere between, I've seen them for as cheap as $75 for the trans and the skid, and I think on the Vanquish website the trans is $180, and I don't know that it comes with the skid or not. Outside of that, it just fits right into the chassis. One other thing you need to keep in mind is that you will not be able to use the battery door on the driver's side for the battery, because the front dig selector, or front overdrive / dig selector, the selector on the driver's side, actually goes into the door. So when you take the door off after you put the body on, you'll notice that this piece here actually comes into the door and prevents you from putting a battery in there, or a big one. You could probably run a smaller or a thinner battery. I would not do that personally, because if you mirror this setup identically, you have two servos you're powering, you have the motor you're powering, and then you have, well, technically you have four servos you're powering, and it becomes extremely limiting on how much power or the longevity of runs that you have. To put it in perspective, I run 1500 Z packs, these batteries here, and I can typically get 45 minutes to an hour of runtime in a Class 2 truck with just the motor and the front servo. That's potentially using winching sometimes as well. Adding 3 more servos and these big 2.2 tires, cut and shuts, you're going to be sucking down batteries extremely quickly. So keep that in mind when you're doing any buggy, really. With all of that being said, I think I touched on everything except for the bed, so I didn't really go into that in very big detail. So this bed I created specifically for the four-wheel steer setup. We were not able to use the other bed that's on Cuts 3D. So this bed here, sits right inside and it hits the servo, so I had to remove that. I did modify it to add a area here so you can put a cooler or your gas can or propane or scale accessories if you'd like. And then there's a deep portion there, so you can stick stuff in there. Maybe that's skinny and long, whatever you would like to do. That's basically the build. We're using an NSDRC servo 800 in the front. I would personally use a 800 or 650 in the front and the rear, something like this. I have not had very good luck with the 700s, so the only servos that I prefer from NSDRC are the 800, the 650, and the 500 budget. Now, the next thing is I actually just received these in the mail, but we will be, and we'll pull it out of the package, these are going to go on this truck. So these are the clear aluminum housings. I was lucky enough to snag a set. One of the downsides to the Optic, and what I've seen a lot of, is that since the rear servo is actually pushing this way, causing the front of the servo to push this way, the axle housings, well, at least the front passenger side of the axle housing and the front passenger hub, knuckle, whatever you want to call it. As you can see, I have broken this axle housing, so it happens. Other than that, I've not had any complaints with the Optic. It's a fun trail truck. It's even funner when you add four-wheel steer. The plastic and the panels and stuff is very heavy compared to something that is titanium or even stainless that's got really thin panels. And so it makes it a little more challenging to drive very technically. So when you're trying to do super steep climbs or transfers, things of that nature, this body is pretty heavy, so you will have to add a little more finesse when driving it, but like I said, it's challenging, it's fun. I would recommend it to anyone. Again, these link extenders can be used not only on the Optic, but any other vehicle. Links in the description below. They are in Cuts 3D for free. Feel free to download those and utilize them. I would recommend printing them out of PETG because it is a more resilient material, so it can take bending and things of that nature. But it's way cheaper than purchasing links and link ends. And if this breaks, you simply print out a spare for the trail, or you just print out a new one and put it in there, which is very easy to do. One last thing before we get into the footage. So the Fusion SE and the Fusion Pro, personally, I don't think that these motors are up to the task for performing very well on a heavy truck. Let me rephrase that. I don't think that these motors are good for trucks that are over the 7-pound mark. So if you're approaching the 7-pound mark or over the 7-pound mark and you want to stay waterproof, while the Fusion SE and the Fusion Pro look like fantastic options, I'm here to tell you that you're probably going to be disappointed if you're doing anything extremely challenging. And the reason that I say that is because when you get anywhere into like a V-notch, or if you get bound up in the least, the motor is going to severely limit itself and or just turn off altogether. I've had many instances of that. It doesn't have the torque that you want it to have in situations that you need the torque. I've geared it differently, so it doesn't have the 15-tooth pinion like it did stock. It's got a 12-tooth pinion in there that didn't really help the matters. Obviously, it makes it slow crawl better, but in terms of getting pinched or wedged or whatever, it just doesn't do the trick. So I would highly recommend a different setup for it. Maybe the new Holmes Hobby sensorless in-runner with some sort of waterproof ESC. You could pick up something like the Hobbywing Axe system. You could get the Castle systems that are 2,000 kV or less and put that in there. But the moral of the story is you don't want a 2-in-1 from Hobbywing or Spectrum, because they're essentially the same motor, for something that's going to be as heavy as this truck. I think with the wheels and tires on it, this truck is right around the 8.5 to 9-pound range. And trying to get it to do things you want it to do in tight, crazy places, the motor just gives out way too easily. Otherwise, you're going to be very upset with how that performs. Now, if you're just simply putting the Fusion in a stock Optic that is, the 5 to 6 pound range, or even 6.5 pound range, the Fusion is going to be perfectly fine for that. But anything more in terms of weight, you're going to want to certainly add a different motor and ESC. There it is. There is the H10 Optic, built by the Anderson Bros Outdoors. 4-wheel steer setup, extremely fun, front and rear dig, game-changing options. Huge shout out to Vanquish for making the truck. Huge shout out to Colorado Adventure Club for making the front dig options. Fantastic products. Those products will be linked in the description below. It has turned out to be a fantastic truck that we are enjoying more and more as we drive it. With that being said, thanks for making it this far. Huge shout out to the TABO club members. And as always, we hope you have a great day.